And for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people. Please check out our agendas and our minutes for our list of ways to support Indigenous communities and help us add to those lists.
I'm going to add a couple of items to the consent agenda since it was first published. Item number 6, item number 7, item number 4D, and then within the business agenda, item number 12. I move that we accept both agendas as amended. All in favor? Is Lim here with us today? I think I may have made it more confusing when next meeting. Okay. I wanted to share publicly that this week is the 4-year anniversary since we had an oil spill up at the water treatment plant property. Today's Valentine's Day, so 4 years ago, they actually allowed the community to use municipal water again for Valentine's, and that was appreciated by the local restaurants especially. But I'm also sharing because on February 1st, we received a demand letter from the New York State Attorney General's office. They want to be reimbursed for the cost of the cleanup that took place in 2020 at the treatment plant property that include remediation of soil and cleaning out reservoir 4. We weren't able to use reservoir 4 from February until later that fall. So we had to buy a lot more water from the New York City DEP because we weren't able to use any of our stormwater or rainwater. And we would have been able to, even though it was a relatively dry year in 2020. But I just wanted to share this publicly because I think what's interesting about how this works is that the state needs to be paid back and the village is responsible. So we're in litigation now, and ideally the contractor who we believe damaged the oil pipe will be responsible for reimbursing both New York State as well as the village, as well as the attorney costs. So that litigation and those negotiations are ongoing. I just wanted to make sure that was shared with the public. Any other announcements?
I have a couple. Narcan and other harm reduction services are always available anywhere in Ulster County because of Ellenville Regional's Project Rescue Program. And so you can text ERH Rescue to 21000 to get hooked up with Narcan, harm reduction supplies like test kits, snort kits, sex kits. The Never Use Alone hotline. Save it because you never know when a friend might need it. It's 800-484-3731. Basically, volunteers stay on the line, with folks to make sure they don't go into overdose. Narcan trainings are always available online at opioidpreventionnp.org. Basically, you just watch a quick video and then fill out the form, and the program will then, deliver your supplies to you. The free food fridge is right outside this building, 25 Pottical Avenue, available to everyone. If you're hungry, go check it out. And if you're able to ever donate, please do. Just make sure you check out the do's and don'ts on millionsofbutterflies.org/free-food-fridge. There's also a Facebook group where people post, things that they share in there. So last week, Assemblymember Stress's staff were at the library. I heard it was a packed day. So next week, Senator Hinchy's staff will be at the library. Instead of Thursday, the 22nd, it's now Tuesday, February 20th from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. at LT Memorial Library in the community room. There will also be a representative from the New York State Comptroller's Office of Unclaimed Funds, who can kind of like walk people through how to find money that belongs to you. Appointments, are appreciated, but you can also just show up, because her staff are there to help. Issues with, Central Hudson, tenant rights, any other kinds of utility bills, homeowner protection, worker compensation, issues getting unemployment, licenses, certifications, Medicaid, SNAP. Basically, if it's an issue that's, can't be solved by us at this table, it probably could be solved by Senator Hinchy's team. So that's next Tuesday. And then just a quick update on the Central Hudson rate case. The litigation has wrapped up since our last update. And I'll have a more full update for next meeting because my bullet points, I'm still trying to comprehend them.
Great. Any other announcements? Okay, we received public comments from Ren Kingsley and Laura Barnes in regards to pedestrian safety. Ren was also in attendance at this morning's town gown meeting with college president and UPD and police chief, town supervisor. We had a fairly detailed conversation about working together to encourage New York State DOT to do more to make our streets as bike and pedestrian friendly, as well as making sure that they accommodate vehicles. So it was, I feel like it's super unfortunate that the tragedy that happened where a young man was hit and run on Route 208. So really disheartening and troubling event that really, I think struck a chord for our community as well as the college community. And we've been talking about pedestrian safety for years and years and years, and it's hard to think that it's really a tragedy that gets people to pay more attention. But that's where we're at right now. And we have a public hearing that remains open for our proposed amendment to our affordable housing law. Have we received any comments? I believe we're gonna meet with the chair of the Affordable Housing Commission later this month at the next meeting. And anyone's welcome. I think we did discuss the idea of writing a letter to the paper encouraging the community to provide us with any feedback while the public hearing remains open.
I'll actually get that done before this weekend.
Okay. For the consent agenda, I move that we adopt it. All in favor?
Aye.
For the business agenda, we have a draft RFQ for the New Paltz consolidation study and reorg plan. So this is basically a document that we will share with prospective consultants who could help the town and the village look at what has been discussed previously when the town and the village have considered consolidation and update any of those reports, and then help us come up with a reorganization plan that would then be included in a consolidation agreement that the town and village boards would have to adopt. If both boards do adopt that agreement, we would then also call for a referendum for the community, and that would include registered voters in the town and the village to decide whether we want to go ahead with the plan articulated and included in that consolidation agreement. And then if that were to happen, then the next step would be to come up with an implementation plan. And that's more nuts and bolts in terms of identifying dates as far as like when certain things would happen. But for all intents and purposes, the reorg plan in the consolidation agreement should be very thorough in terms of what a new government would look like and how it would function. So I move that we approve this RFQ and share it with prospective consultants who would be interested in providing us with their proposals.
And,
Any further discussion?
and share it far and wide.
Far and wide.
Yeah.
The town board, I spoke with the town supervisor this morning. He's going to make sure that it is on the town board agenda tomorrow evening for their approval.
Awesome.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then skate park planning. So a couple weeks ago, we had our latest design meeting regarding the proposed skate park. This is a project that we've been working on for some time in terms of trying to figure out where a skate park could be sited within our village, within Hasbrook Park. We had previously done soil borings to see where the water table is, to identify where rock formations are, and we hired a local firm to help us with the design, and that design was shared publicly. It was reported on in the newspaper, and we had the skate aficionados join that meeting. It was a really interesting meeting because they were largely very supportive of the design, and they offered some really thoughtful suggestions in terms of how to make the park flow best it can, so it served both experienced skaters as well as new kids, as well as people doing things on different wheeled devices, and also making sure that the skate park was ADA compliant. Well, it's not necessarily ADA compliant, it's more about being accessible to someone who might be in a wheelchair, and whether they would be able to use it. So we're trying to check off as many boxes as possible, make sure that it serves as many people as possible so that they could enjoy it. And our board has discussed many times the idea that we believe it makes a great deal of sense to site this within Hasbrook Park next to our other recreation assets. The thinking is families, kids, friends, all the above can, maybe you want to sit in the grass for a while, maybe you want to go play basketball for a while, maybe you want to use the playground. The idea is to, really check off as many boxes as possible.
Yeah, and I thought this past meeting was really cool, how just seeing how like the whole skate community and BMX community was coming to us with that same exact thought. Like they're all like municipal future mayors. With thinking like how would this work for somebody who's goofy, versus like right-handed? How would this work for somebody with like XYZ mobility issues? How would this work for like little kids who are like losing their skateboard like all the time, while everybody else is, still going? And they were really thinking about all those things, right down to, how to make it safe and enjoyable for just like people watching, like making sure to identify like there's shade right there. So that spot right next to the playground is just so ideal.
Right. So we have, and I was at the New York Conference of Mayors. I was comparing notes and speaking with the municipal manager for the city of Auburn, as well as their mayor. And it was an encouraging conversation because they were able to secure some funding towards this project via a grant opportunity through the CFA process that would be paid for through New York State Parks. And what we're trying to do at this point now is, in addition to getting the design right, but also getting the plan articulated in terms of how will we pay for this. And probably be, we've reached out to our representatives in Albany, and we'll be asking for assistance via member items. We anticipate using some payment in lieu of parkland to pay for the proposed skate park, as well as, I'm trying to think what else is like clearly. So state parks, recreation fee via payment in lieu of parkland, money via member items. There'll be a few different ways that we hope to pay for this skate park.
One thing I noticed from, and I'm glad that you linked with the mayor from, Auburn, because it's really helpful seeing how other municipalities have made this work, because, what was my instinct, like going into this from the get-go, is when you have those other funding sources, especially like the payment in lieu of parkland, like rec fee type stuff, when you can line that kind of thing up, it makes it a lot easier to get like smaller little grants, to fill in the bubbles from the, skate park foundation, from Tony Hawk, from Harold Hunter and stuff like that, especially, looking at our census numbers, how, we're not, the village population is not exactly wealthy. So, yeah, so being able to make those other bullet items work, I think, is the only way to possibly get those other grants. And it's also great that like, it's exciting how like already our assembly member's office, it's asking like all the right questions about this project, and like they're really interested. And now every time I run into like anyone from like assembly member Stress's office, like they're like, tell me more. So, it's really great to know like they're excited about this project.
Right. Do you want to add anything, Stevie? Any thoughts on our proposed skate park idea?
That's all Stevie hears me talking about, like literally, for quite some time. So
I think what's exciting and important about the skate park concept too is that, and this is like largely studied in terms of communities' need for third spaces, right? Particularly young people, they might have like organized school or organized work, and what we need to do as communities to make sure that they're as healthy as possible is that we provide space for young people to gather and play and socialize and do stuff without specific constraints, and there's enormous value to both young people, all the ages, older people, just playing and recreating and socializing. And I think a centrally located park with a skate park is very helpful towards that. And there's lots of interesting research and discussions about the psychological benefits for having skate parks in communities. And we see that because we've had these gatherings of skaters, and it's clearly something that will be greatly appreciated and used.
Yeah, and like that reminds me, I actually should probably compile in an easier format, like some research that I've been doing in the past like 4.5, 5 years on housing issues. Because we are like in over 71% of our population all rent. And if you're not from here, you might like imagine like, oh, New Paltz, everyone has a yard and whatnot there, but that's not the case for us, at all. We are a highly dense, small little mountain college town, right? So in all this research, that whole issue of third spaces has come up as the correlation between mental health issues and high renter populations. So I should probably like put that together for us related to this project. that just clicked for me, like literally last night.
Well, we did include that in the
Yeah.
grant application that we wrote in 2022 to the DRI.
Yeah.
You know, identifying the skate park as something that would make sense for New York State to help us with, for those broader benefits, especially as communities wrestle with things as challenging as the opioid crisis.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Like there's just so much data that shows this would support that. And not just like people who skateboard, roller skate, BMX, wheelchair, but for people who like to watch. And from the last meeting, I thought it was really great how, a neighbor, has architectural background was like that comment just made my heart sing, was, really excited about the beauty of the structure too, as a work of art, because that's how I feel as well, and I don't know if I am as skilled of a skater as I was when I was, nannying my 3 younger siblings and had to like take them all to, the half pipe that was behind like a skate shop in my hometown growing up, just so I could skate. But I know I would definitely like to watch it, and I think that's a community benefit too.
Yeah, and I think the other point that's interesting about having a skate park near other recreation assets is that your friend might be more interested in playing basketball, and this way you can hang out as a group, and you're really encouraging the commingling of as many different people as possible. The same idea is like you might have a family with some younger kids who want to play on the playground, and the older kids who might want to just run around the expansive grass field. And I would agree that it was really nice hearing from architect Alan Ross, who said that he enjoyed how the design took advantage of the existing open area, where the design really tries to just like spill out into the expansive grass area, as opposed to just being some standalone structure that doesn't easily integrate with the rest of the park.
Yeah.
And so that was a nice compliment. So kind of like next steps in terms of what we have to do. So we have some details in terms of how much material will be needed and some of the basic details in terms of its construction, but we really need to include those details in an engineering report. And I've been speaking with our village engineering firm, Bernier and Larios, who also helped with designs related to the Saugerty skate park. But you need an engineering report to apply for things like the grant to New York State Parks. And then the other concept that we've been talking about for some time is trying to list the different things that need to be done in terms of materials and specific tasks like site prep and the building of the features within the park. What needs to be done, how much those different things will cost, and the team from Hudson Valley Trail Works were going to help us with that, because I think part of this also will include asking community members, maybe they do have a large construction vehicle, or maybe they do have access to materials. So this will be a combination of in-kind service, like our public works department can do some of the site prep, just like the city of Auburn's public works team did a fair amount of their site prep. So it's a combination of what we can do by asking local benefactors, as well as our public works department, and then things that we're going to have to just put in a bid document and have qualified skate park builder companies bid on. So it's really like probably 3 different categories, and seeing which of those categories will be responsible for the various tasks or expenses. So that's another piece to the puzzle that we're working on. And then I just included in here under 2C, just the local law that we have regarding payment in lieu of parkland is with the new units from the various apartment complexes that are being proposed and are at different levels of approval before our planning board. The revenues from those projects would be used to help pay for this project. And in addition to you know, we have one super passionate group in skateboarders, but maybe an equally passionate, potentially more intense group are the pickleball aficionados. And we're also working on a project using $100,000 in grant money from Ulster County to improve and update the ball courts down at Elting Avenue across from St. Joe's Church. So that will also include rain garden feature to the north. We already did the rain garden feature to the south. What I think is super interesting about that plan too is, you know, new retaining wall, new fence, new surfaces. You know, there'll be a brand new basketball court, 2 brand new pickleball courts. But in the center of those courts, there'll be concrete steps where you can walk from those courts up into Hasbrook Park. Whereas like currently you can't access the park as easily from the courts. So it kind of like speaks to this idea of like, these are all integrated recreational assets. It'll just feel a whole lot more welcoming and just encouraging for as many people as possible to spend as much time as they need to you know, exercise their recreation muscles. Okay, so that's it as far as the update on the skate park project. The next item is the proposed apartment complexes that are at different levels of approval before our village planning board, 137 North Chestnut, 145 North Chestnut, and a discussion about payment in lieu of parkland. You're here to oh, Charlie, come
Yeah.
join us. Yeah, that'd be great. Come.
I will say I am fascinated with the skate park discussion. I recently lost my younger cousin, and he was from the city of Rome, and they have been doing some grant work to do a skate park in his honor. So you might want to reach out to the city of Rome mayor, and I'm happy to make that connection and could help with any grants. My name is Charlie Gottlieb. I'm from Whiteman, Osterman, and Hannah in Albany, New York. Land Use Council for both apartment complexes on North Chestnut, KES Chestnut Properties and Trail Link. I didn't exactly know what you guys were going to be discussing this evening, but I wanted to kind of give you an update and share some sentiments from the developers.
So KES is the former Agway and Trail Link is the former Gateway property that's owned by Scott Arnold and Rycor.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep. So as part of the, let me just start from the beginning. So we received planning board approval in December. We are now working on developers agreements for those projects that this board will review and will enter into. We just sent over a draft developers agreement to Mr. Frank, your attorney. I think it's going to need a meeting and some discussions and some revisions with your board, Mr. Larios, and so forth. The crux of that is those 2 projects are fully paying for a new pump station on North Chestnut Street, right?
We've always discussed 1/3 split each, village and the 2 apartment complexes.
So,
and if Baxter was the applicant for the Momentum Fund, so if that money was received, then all of that money would go towards the that project?
So a lot of that's in the developer's agreement, but the way the planning board approvals are worded. So we got an engineering report from Mr. Larios outlining that the cost of a new pump station would be roughly $400,000. Through the planning board process, each applicant committed to paying half of that for the new pump station. So now you can imagine that those two, the village has an existing pump station problem. That pump station is, I think, from the 1960s. It has a ton of existing flows, right? So it has to be replaced. Those two developers are taking it upon themselves to significantly contribute, construct, and then dedicate to the village a new pump station that will address your existing flows.
And accommodate those two new projects.
Right, which are smaller flows compared to what's existing.
Sure, but if it,
So with regard to recreation fees, the planning board acknowledged the recreation fees would be needed. We would like this board to, as a part of those developers agreement, consider the fact that there are substantial contributions being made for a new pump station. I know oftentimes the sentiment is that the developers need to pay for everything under the sun, but I assure you that needed housing, the affordable units that are being proposed in the new pump station is taxing these developments. And so it's important to make sure these developments get constructed for a lot of reasons. One, the state and the village is in a housing crisis. You need housing units. Two, the village needs a new pump station. Those developers are going to construct and pay for $400,000 of a new pump station. To then also include recreational fees on top of that is a lot, and may hurt the viability of the projects, which would leave the pump station remaining the same and in need of improvement.
Charlie, do the developers want to pay for half of the pump station each, as opposed to what we had discussed previously, a third, a third, a third?
So the third never came up in the planning board meetings.
That's always been my understanding.
The way the planning board resolutions read, I think it's like $398,000. Each project is committed in the planning board resolution to enter into an agreement with this board. They will pay for half. It is also the understanding that one of the developers would construct the pump station. And this is all outlined in the developers agreement that we sent to your council, and then would deed over the pump station to the village so that you would retain ownership of
Yeah,
it.
that's all my understanding too.
So, we respectfully request that be taken into consideration when you're assessing the recreational fees for those projects. There is the ability under state law to consider other practical factors when you're assessing recreational fees. Also, I'd like to point out that both projects are proposing connections to the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail with a bridge which connects to several parks throughout the village. There is some open space on the Trail Link property. They're also improving the North Chestnut Street frontage with bike lanes, a new crosswalk. I think it's from across from Trail Link.
Veterans Drive, where there's a
Drive.
current crosswalk. Yeah.
Right, so that's all now going to be complete streets compliant and friendly, allowing people to travel, use the crosswalk, get to the rail trail. So we just hope that there can be a discussion about the recreational fees to make sure these additional housing units get constructed.
So our board has discussed this publicly already about, and this is news to me, and maybe this is where there's something being confused. So if we're working together, I feel like the 1/3 split, is very different from what you just described in terms of the two housing projects splitting the approximately $400,000 cost on their own.
So this is the first I'm hearing of the 1/3 split. I'm sure if I took that back to my clients, they'd be happy, right? But the planning board resolutions do.
The planning board resolutions might, address it differently, just as a matter of, like they need to, have it handled a certain way, but our understanding has always been the 1/3 split.
Okay, so I think one of the steps we should take then is, again, we sent the developers agreement to your council. I think it would be great to have a meeting with yourself and the engineers.
And we have our fingers crossed that momentum fund through the
Right.
Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council, that application is successful, and, that would, that assistance would be worth a whole lot more than simply the cost of the full sewer pump station. It would really create a nice tailwind for, I don't know how that will work with the two projects. Are they sharing that equally, or are they, is one of the projects benefiting more because they were the applicant?
Yeah,
It's kind
I
of
need
between
to,
them, I guess.
yeah, and I need to look
But-
at the
So
specifics.
my understanding was that if the momentum fund comes, then the third goes out the window, because the first money from that momentum fund would pay for.
Right, and that may be the case, and I think the purpose of me coming here this evening was to make sure that all those items, right, all these open-aired questions are addressed before any recreational fees are assessed.
Yeah. Well, we're keeping the recreation fee conversation separate because we
Okay.
need
Yeah.
recreation fees. Like, I can't build skate parks and pickleball courts without recreation fees.
Right, and our position is there is a substantial monetary commitment from these developments for a new pump station to fix an aging sewer system. And yes, recreation is great. Again, all for it. I think it's terrific. But sewer infrastructure is also vital to housing.
It's even more than terrific. It's also just our local law.
That's just the law.
Which this board does have the ability to be flexible with upon other practical considerations. So I appreciate the time. I think we'll be having more discussions as the developer agreements get worked out. And if you have any questions, just please reach out. Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the Mid-Hudson Community Solar Initiative. That's one of the community solar opportunities, and Autumn and I were trying to wrap our heads around it fully. So there's so many programs that people often confuse. Like, we have the community choice aggregation program, we have community solar, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. You could be in the local government's CCA or not, and you could be in a community solar program or not. We were contacted by Mid-Hudson Community Solar because it seems like that program is really trying to help make sure that community solar opportunities are communicated to disadvantaged communities, because the opportunity involves a 10% haircut to your electricity bill, and that is paid for by New York State through a NYSERDA program. And Ampion, NextAmp, our CCA administrator, Jewel, had a community solar program in the past. I don't know if they still do. So this is another one, but I think what they're trying to do is take advantage of this NYSERDA program and make sure that it's communicated far and wide, and in particular, make sure that it's information that's shared with disadvantaged communities, that you have this opportunity to sign up and therefore benefit by having, you're basically taking some of your, I guess the thinking behind what New York State was trying to do with this program is they were providing assistance to developers of solar farms, and then they were also in parallel guaranteeing that those solar farms had customers. So that's the thinking behind what NYSERDA and New York State were trying to do with these community solar programs. So this is just a draft letter that would be sent to our community members who would qualify as disadvantaged. I have a few kind of nuts and bolts questions that I want to understand a little bit better, but I thought it was important that we at least introduce the idea this evening, and then we can circle back at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, and I think another big part of the idea, the concept behind it is, like early on in transition, off dirty fossil fuels towards the clean energy future, one of the barriers, that had been identified in more so disadvantaged communities, of course, communities that are high rates of renters and so on, is like, sure, we would love to go solar, but we don't have a roof, or my roof isn't good enough. Like, the whole, half the communities in shade all the time. I'm on the shady side of Main Street now. It's cold, all these issues and stuff. And like, this is a way completely around that because it has nothing to do with your roof, just some background there. Yeah, I have some nuts and bolts questions, but they're yeah. But yeah, putting this out there is good.
Okay, so we'll try to find answers to those questions before moving forward, and then we'll put that on the next agenda. So the next item on this business agenda is just related to our proposed amendment to the affordable housing law. I don't have any update or need to discuss what we've been considering.
Yeah, I'm good for now. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing, any updates and whatnot from our affordable housing board folks next meeting.
So if you guys are here as journalism students, that the 20,000-foot explanation for this law is that currently the affordable housing law in New Paltz, the way it works is if you build an apartment complex with 10 or more units, then 10% of those units have to be affordable. So if you build a 20-unit building, you would have to include 2 of the 20 as affordable. And the proposed law would actually increase that number. And I think it was if there are apartment complexes with 20 or more units, then 15% would have to be affordable.
And yeah, it's pretty great because it's, what, a decade since that law was, discussed, and then 9 years since it was enacted. So it's like exactly when, great timing for kind of looking at it and tweaking it.
Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll hear from our Affordable Housing Board Chair at an upcoming meeting. So the next item is a letter of intent to apply to the New York State Pro Housing Communities Program. So this is a statewide initiative. It's a bit of a pivot from last year at this time when the governor was mandating that communities add a certain amount of housing to add housing stock across the entire state. That was objected to by different communities because they felt that it was kind of a one-size-fits-all solution. And so this is more of an opt-in voluntary program, but then there are carrots included in that. What we've done for the last 8 years is every single time that you could apply for New York Forward or the Downtown Vitalization Initiative grant program, we apply. And moving forward, you would actually have to be a participating community in this pro housing initiative to receive an award like that. I think what's interesting about New Paltz is that we easily meet those targets in terms of having added new housing stock for several years now and moving forward with the various projects that are being considered. Um, you know, just 2 days ago, a housing developer who wanted to construct affordable units in our community wanted to meet and talk about the possibility of an idea. So there's just a lot being considered. And I think it speaks to the fact that developers want to be here because they recognize that people want to live here.
Yeah, so it's like, it's a no-brainer. And I think that's kind of the conversation I've been hearing from other municipalities like around us too, is like, okay, yeah, duh, like we're in, sign us up. We were in last year too.
Right. So we need a letter, and I don't, I like when they often provide samples of letters of intent, but I don't believe there's a sample letter. I mean, maybe we could just.
We could see what the other Ulster County towns did. Didn't Kingston submit one and a Sopus and stuff? We can,
Okay,
piece them together and.
so that's something we need.
Because it
So
looks like those were accepted. They got press at least. Yeah.
Right. So I move that we go ahead and mail that letter. What'd you say? The requirements for the letter? Well, I think those are the things that you have to show subsequent, like what we have to do this week is just send a letter that say we want to play, and then we will play by providing answers to those questions that you're listing. That's what I was wondering about, like, what do we say in this letter besides we want to be officially considered? Or so all in favor of, did you second it?
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then, oh, so this is the draft language that the Shade Tree Commission wants to share with the community by including it in water and sewer bills. So are we also including a link to the code? I think that would be a nice addition. So what the Shade Tree Commission provided us was a couple of lines that just described why trees are valuable and the mission of the Shade Tree Commission. I think we should include just a link to Ecode 360, where if a community member wanted to read what the Shade Tree Commission does, and then the rules, because the rules are pretty straightforward in that you can't cut down a tree if it is within 20 feet of the street. You have to call the building department. You can cut down a tree further back on your property, but you can't cut down street trees unless, because sometimes street trees do need to be cut down, like maybe they're sick or creating a hazard, and it would be acceptable. But the reason that this law exists is just so, the trees are protected because they are valuable. Okay, I move that we include that language with a link to our code for the next series of water bills. All in favor? Aye. And then we got a request from Logan Saylor, middle school student who wanted to put a geocache in Peace Park. And I'd be comfortable with that as long as it's not something that involved a bunch of other like plastic toys that people are collecting, more of a geocache where it's part of like checking off boxes that you visited certain sites. I mean, do you guys have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I just was wondering what the what is the plan? But yeah, that makes sense to me, making sure, it's in alignment with not polluting. There used to be a geocache, under the old steps into Hasbrook Park with the stamping, geocaching.
And that may have been done unofficially.
I think it was unofficial, yeah.
Because I
don't think-
kind of appreciate what this young man is doing and that he's asking for permission.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, because my old roommate Amanda would do the stamps, and so we would go around, and like there were a bunch on the rail trail and then one under the stairs, like there. And it was really hard to get to that one. Like, yeah.
So I move that we let this young man know that we're fine with that, provided that it's simply a geocache and not something that is like a receptacle that holds trinkets or plastic toys that people are collecting.
Yeah, second.
All in favor? Aye. And then we have a draft resolution calling for transit equity and pedestrian safety.
Yeah, so I actually just shared Ren on it, asking if we could like chat more about what this resolution should contain. And I met with another transit equity activist in the community, Dylan, who has been mapping out crash data for the community and who had all sorts of ideas. And so I think I would like to keep working on this and like have it hopefully ready for next meeting, to have a way to get, on paper, like, our, like, memorialize our support basically for different state legislation that are, being considered this year that would, address, pedestrian safety, cyclist safety, getting away from car-centric culture, but I want to make sure that it's not just a generic like support of state bills type resolution, and like, really addresses like all the different ideas that people have here. So if you don't mind, we'll return to this next time.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And the next is the resolution celebrating 20-year anniversary of the first same-sex marriage for LGBTQ people.
Yeah, can I read this?
Please do.
First, just want to thank, Taylor from the Ulster County Clerk's Office, and of course the clerk, Nina, for their help making all this research possible. It's just so interesting how, like, my freshman year of college, all the news that existed, like, is not easily Googleable anymore. Like, you have to get into archives. So I needed help. So yeah. Resolution of the Village Board of the Village of New Paltz celebrating the 20th anniversary of the same-sex marriages of LGBTQ plus couples that took place on February 27th, 2004 in Peace Park. Whereas on February 27th, 2004, the Honorable Mayor Emeritus of the Village of New Paltz, Jason West, performed same-sex marriages of 27 LGBTQ plus couples in Peace Park without marriage licenses, marking the first of such marriages in the country performed by an elected official as an act of civil disobedience outside of San Francisco, California. And whereas West's well-publicized marathon act of civil disobedience, which had the support of other municipal leaders as well as the community as a whole, sparked countless other such acts of resistance through unlicensed matrimonies, which catapulted the ongoing fight for LGBTQ plus rights into the national spotlight. And whereas on March 3rd, 2004, Mayor Emeritus Jason West pleaded not guilty after the Ulster County District Attorney charged him with 19 criminal counts. Whereas on March 4th, 2004, Nyack Mayor Emeritus John Shields said he would lead a group of same-sex couples to the clerk's office to apply for marriage licenses That same week in Ithaca, Mayor Emeritus Carolyn K. Peterson said that while the city would not be issuing same-sex marriage licenses, it will accept applications and forward them to the state's health department for individual determinations. And whereas on March 6, 2004, in New Paltz, 2 ordained ministers of the Unitarian Universalist Church, Catherine Greenleaf and Dawn Sangre, performed marriage ceremonies for 13 same-sex couples who did not have marriage licenses. And the reverends were charged with a crime for solemnizing marriages without licenses. And whereas on March 13th, 2004, Reverends Greenleaf and Sangre were joined by Reverend Marion Vissel in performing an additional 25 same-sex weddings for LGBTQ plus couples in New Paltz. And all 3 were then met with the same multitudes of charges that Mayor Meredith West had faced. And whereas Ulster County Judge Emeritus Michael Kavanaugh stated, quote, the impact of Mayor West's position that an elected official may willfully violate a law anytime he or she believes it is unconstitutional has profound and unsettling implications. This view, if accepted, would mean that the mayor is a law unto himself and would in certain circumstances have power that is simply incompatible with a democratic form of government based on rule of law, end quote. And whereas New York State Attorney General Emeritus Eliot Spitzer stated on March 3rd, 2004, that same-sex marriages are illegal in New York, and public officials who perform weddings for gays and lesbians are subject to criminal penalties, echoing the statements made by Ulster County District Attorney Emeritus Don Williams and Ulster County Judge Emeritus Kavanaugh. And whereas New Paltz further made its imprint on LGBTQ plus history when town justices Jonathan Katz and Judith Reichler dismissed both cases of Reverends Greenleaf and Sangre, citing numerous examples in which New York's highest court has consistently extended rights and benefits to same-sex partners. And whereas in June 2004, Mayor Emeritus West was named one of People magazine's 50 hottest bachelors of the year, in some ways helping to normalize LGBTQ plus rights as a household staple. And whereas in 2006, the New York Court of Appeals ruled that the New York State Constitution does not require same-sex marriage rights and left the question of recognition to the state legislature. Following the 2006 court decision, the New York State Assembly passed same-sex marriage legislation in 2007, 2009, and 2011. The New York Senate rejected the same legislation in a 38 to 24 vote on December 2nd, 2009. In June 2011, same-sex marriage legislation finally passed both the Assembly and the Senate and was signed into law by Governor Andrew Cuomo on June 24, 2011, allowing same-sex couples to marry legally in New York State for the first time. And whereas on June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in Obergefell versus Hodges that same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry and acknowledge that, quote, no union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family, end quote, thus allowing same-sex couples to marry legally throughout the United States for the first time. And whereas this June will mark the 20th annual Pride March and Festival to take place here in New Paltz, an event which originated from the February 2004 acts of civil disobedience. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the village and town of New Paltz celebrate the 20th anniversary of the first same-sex marriages of LGBTQ plus couples in Peace Park. And we remain steadfastly united in our belief that love is love, that everybody has the right to love, marry, and create a family with any partner of their choosing. And be it further resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees honors our community's place in American history as a LGBTQ plus haven, a community that will forever support leaders who cause good trouble for the sake of advancing civil rights and further protecting human rights. And be it further resolved, the clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to everybody that we usually send things to, send it up the chain. And so I motion that we adopt this resolution.
Seconded, Stevie?
All in favor? Oh,
No,
discussion?
further discussion.
Discussion.
Really fantastic work. I especially appreciate how you included the historical references and the shout outs to elected town justices, Katz and Reichler. Yeah, I think that was an important part of what was going on is Jason did really important work. He was super brave. He got arrested, and there were numerous other people in the community in official roles and unofficial roles who were also very supportive of everything that went on. And I think you did a really nice job of capturing, that it was an all hands on deck community wide effort.
Everyone was just getting arrested left and right, like looking at like all these documents, honestly, and like looking at like, just quickly, like that moment in history 20 years ago, like I was there at that wedding, like, at that ceremony in Peace Park, as a freshman in college with my cross country team, and it feels like yesterday in some ways. 20 years is not that much time, but thinking about like how much has changed in that time, and like how hard, like, so State Senator Neil Breslin, he actually just announced his retirement. He was pushing it on the Senate side when the Republicans had the majority in our state Senate. Year after year, like he's like, let's just, do this thing. And like it kept getting shut down, and a few, people, in the Democratic conference with him were trying to do the right thing, and they were making it into this partisan issue. And like, I really do believe, like, after doing all this research, like, always knew we had an important role, but like, I really don't think like all the advancements that have happened in the past 20 years would have actually happened without that all hands on deck experience where it was like, oh, I'm a reverend, let me go get arrested.
Yeah, a really important first step that was needed before a lot of other important changes took place.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share details about the event that is scheduled to honor Jason and the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, so 20 years later, there's now a New Paltz Pride Coalition 501c3 nonprofit formed for the sole purpose of like having our own center, Pride Center here right in New Paltz where it all started. And as the group's first big event, on Sunday, February 25th, we're hosting a Love is Love drag brunch, and we're going to be honoring Jason West at it. And it's been great because so many of these folks that I just mentioned in our resolution will be, coming back to town in many cases. The Pride Coalition is going to make this an annual award that we're going to name for Jason after we give it to Jason the first time around. It's going to be the Pride New Paltz Award. But yeah, there's that big event, 11 a.m. at Novella's. One of the couples that was wed on that day in 2004 will be renewing their vows that morning right before like the party starts at Novella's. It's a fundraiser type thing. Look for information on social media. The after party is going to be where I used to see our former mayor all the time, my favorite watering hole, Snugs. And it's going to be a pretty cool lineup of, a lot of like LGBTQ artists that I haven't really seen on the stage much, including somebody who I guess used to play in a band at Snugs all the time 25 years ago, and has since like moved away, come out as trans, and this is going to be their first return to that stage, and like it just gives me chills every time I think of that story too. So, in doing this little resolution and, working with the Pride Coalition to honor, that day in history, making these connections has been really, really cool. So yeah, everybody look out on social media for all those different happenings on the 25th of this month, because it's going to be a big day for all of New Paltz. And I'm actually taking all the stuff I did, the research for this resolution, the clippings. I'm going to go print out some of the photos and stuff, and Manny's is donating some art supplies so I can make a whole visual version of this resolution that I will be carrying between the parties in town that day. And then I'll eventually bring it here and like stick it on the cork board. So when people come to meetings, for the next month, they could see those old clippings. And some of the judges and reverends have said they're going to bring their scrapbooks to the events too. Yeah.
Well, you were saying that we didn't vote, right? Cool.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And I know the town has a version of this on their agenda for tomorrow night too. So we're all in.
You want to do item number 11? Because you're communicating with police chief.
Yes. So, like I said, 20 years of pride, being right here in New Paltz. So it's always been the first Sunday in June. But you know what? For this really special year, the 20th anniversary, we're going to make it day one of Pride Month. That's what the new executive director of the Hudson Valley Pride Center up in Kingston, our New Paltz's own Richard, said we're going to bill it as, instead of worrying about other events happening on Sunday. Like, nah, let's do Saturday, day one of Pride Month. So I'm working on getting that paperwork together. There's a coalition of organizations that I'm getting together on a call with each other this coming Monday, for everyone to kind of pick different parts of who's going to take the lead on the festival, who's going to take the lead on the march and all of that. And then I'm going to have them all kind of help me host a community-wide meeting to find more organizations that might want to help make this year bigger and better than ever. So motion to establish Saturday, June 1st, 2024 for our, LGBTQ plus Pride March and Festival.
I would like a second.
All in favor, or discussion?
All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Okay, so the next item is we have a request for a payment plan from the landlord at 2 Mohawk Avenue. I imagine there was a leak that, or probably in most of these cases, it's often a toilet that's running. So someone ends up with a water bill and sewer bill that's higher than they expected. So before we go ahead and decide whether or not we want to approve this payment plan, I think it's really important to re-emphasize how these things work. So if I have a leaky toilet in my house and I end up using a lot more water than I would ordinarily, or let's say I leave a hose on out in my yard and I forget to turn it off for a month, and then I have a giant water bill, that's my responsibility.
The water got used.
Because the water was used, and we have had instances, and it's not we, it's like every single municipality that has a municipal water department gets asked if their bill could be forgiven. And the reason that it cannot be forgiven, it would actually be in violation of state law. Municipalities are not allowed to give things that are owned by ratepayers or taxpayers to anyone else, because we are here as fiduciaries. This is not like Alex, Tim, and Stevie work for a for-profit company and we have a reserve fund, and you had something unfortunate and we could take money out of the reserve fund and make your unfortunate situation less painful. Because if we did that, then basically what we would be doing is we would be taking money from your neighbor's pot of money and asking your neighbor to pay for the fact that you used water because your toilet malfunctioned or because you left a spigot on. So that's a violation of state law. But what we are allowed to do is, like, if someone gets hit with a higher than expected bill, let's say it's north of $1,000, and it might be useful to have a payment plan, or helpful to have a payment plan, we can arrange for a ratepayer to make a few payments to soften the blow, so they're not spending or paying for that entire bill upfront. What the Village of New Paltz has also done, and we rely on our public works staff to help us with this. So the examples that I provided before, like a toilet or an indoor sink, that water was A, used, and then B, sent down into the sewer system. So the wastewater treatment plant down on Huguenot Street is also impacted. There's no way to interpret that any differently than whether you used more water than you would have liked to, or how much you ordinarily use. You used the water, you used sewer capacity at the sewer plant. But we can make a determination, and then we have created this formula. So we will haircut a sewer bill by 50% if it is a hose outside. So the reason that we don't eliminate the entire sewer bill is because we have significant inflow and infiltration problems, and stormwater or water from whatever would most likely still end up in stormwater drains, still end up in the conveyance system, which leads to the treatment plant property. So we will provide a haircut, not for a leaky toilet, because that water clearly just went 100% into the sewer plant. But if it's outdoors, some of it went into your yard, and maybe some of it went into the stormwater system that might have also then commingled with the sewer system. But it's really important that that is the only way that we do these things, because providing a discount for anyone who wants their bill to be less would effectively be the equivalent of asking your neighbors to pay for it. We don't have that authority. We cannot ask anyone's neighbors to pay for an unfortunate situation. I just wanted to make sure that that's super clear and documented. I mean, I know, especially Alex knows about this because he's seen many of these requests in the past, but if you weren't aware, but it's probably also super valuable to remind our community how these things work and why we can't just make an unexpectedly large sewer bill or water bill go away.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's funny you mentioned me being interested in it too, because it's just this topic is coming up a whole lot, kind of like on a state level, with there's a few private water companies in the state. One of them does business in our county, not here in New Paltz. You know, and people run into so many issues, and so kind of like rereading the public service laws, you know, in terms of like Public Service Commission and utilities laws and all of that, lately, to kind of like try to understand like what is going wrong there, really just brings us back home, you know, like why as a government, you know, with this public utility, like you really like can't cut breaks or anything. This is, you know, a finite resource that we all pay for, and once it's used, you know, regardless where it goes or if you remember using it.
Yeah, that's the difference between a public entity and a for-profit entity.
Yep.
For-profit entity hopefully is a successful business and has a little pot of money, and then that little pot of money might make sense to access that, and their profits go down a little bit because they want to soften a blow for one of their important customers. But that way of thinking is not a luxury that we are allowed to extend to our ratepayers. I would like to move that we approve this payment plan for Mr. Caffrey, the landlord at 2 Mohawk Avenue.
Definite.
Any further discussion, questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I move bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Planning board report liaison. So Bill is not here, so we don't have any update. Zoning Board of Appeals liaison update. I can share that the ZBA met last night there were two items being discussed. One was a change at Huguenot Street in terms of the size of the cemetery area. And that was easily discussed. Didn't seem like a challenging situation. The ZBA set a public hearing for that. Did you say sometime in March? March 12th, the public hearing has been set for that ask from historic Huguenot Street. And then the second item that was discussed, there is a interpretation that was made by our building department related to a farm school, herb school at the property on Huguenot Street. I believe the address is 181 Huguenot Street, the former Jewett farm. So that has a conservation easement on it. It's a very large parcel which straddles both the town and village, and the current tenant has been running school, and there has been discussions about whether that's permitted based on zoning, and they were before the ZBA because the building department provided an opinion that their request that it run as a home business was not in accordance with our zoning, so they were challenging his interpretation. I believe that will be an ongoing discussion. I don't have anything else. All in favor of adjourning?
Happy Valentine's Day.